Hi, my name is MSDYN365BC and in this video we'll see a demo when and how you can use Approver Type Salesperson Purchaser. This is the fifth video in this workflow series. In the earlier videos we have talked about different workflow setup options and also have seen a demo of how and when you should use Approver Type workflow user group. So before we begin, I would like to thank everybody for all your questions, comments on those previous videos, and I'll try to cover all the scenarios with Approver Type Salesperson and Purchaser in this particular video. So without wasting further time, let's see and let's start. So like I had in the previous one, for this video I also have the same three windows open, one for my user which we'll use as requester, and then a user for approver 1, and then a session for approver 2. So let's start and setting up our workflows or changing our workflow setup. So you can search for workflows. We'll choose a workflow that we have created earlier. As we talked about it yesterday, we need to disable the workflow before we make any changes. So we have done that, and we'll now change the first event responses, and then we'll change it to approver type as salesperson and purchaser, and we'll go through all these options. So let's right now select approver change. So what we are testing right now is approver type salesperson purchaser and approver limit type as approver chain. Now if you have seen previous videos, we changed this condition for the last demo, so I'll reset it back. Pending approval to 0, and here also pending approval greater than 0. So those options were changed for the workflow user group scenario where you wanted a either or situation in terms of sequence in the last video. So we'll reset these options back, and we'll change the approver type as salesperson purchaser, and the first demo that we'll see is on approver chain of type approval limit type. So that's changed. Let's enable it. Now when we use approver type salesperson purchaser and selected the option of approver chain, we need to set up the workflow user group to define the hierarchy of how approval process will execute. So for that, let's set up approval workflow approval user setup. We'll use the same three users, my user as requester, approver 1 and approver 2. And the way we want to set it up is, let me expand it. As it is of type salesperson and purchaser, I'll have to choose a salesperson purchaser before we begin that. For the requester who is requesting it, and I'll briefly talk about it in a while, but let me choose AH. So whenever I as a requester will send a approval request for a sales order with salesperson purchaser code as AH, then and only then the workflow will get triggered. If there is any other salesperson purchaser than this, then I'll get an error message that there is no setup for that salesperson and purchaser. Then I want to say that whenever I send an approval request, it should go to approver 1 if it is more than my limit, which is 100. So let's put this into a slide, and I say if Saurav is an approver, a sender whose approver is approver 1, and my limit is, just to make it simple, 1000, let's say. So I'll change the limit here also. Then if it is less than 1000, it will get auto approve. If it is more than 1000, it will look for approver 1. Approver 1 has a limit, let's say, of 2000. So let me set it here. Approver 1 whose approver is approver 2 of limit 2000. And then we have other user approver 2, which is set to unlimited sales approval. So the sequence will flow like this, that if I have a sales order with salesperson code AH, then, and I request an approval, then if based on the amount, if the sales order amount is less than 1000, then there is no approval required. If it is more than 1000, then the entry will go for approval for user approver 1. And if the entry is more than 2000, then there will be two entries created, one for approval 1 and approval 2. So it's also based on how what is your amount on the sales order purchase sales order. So this is our setup for these three users. Saurav creating a sales order with AH goes to approver 1 approves it till 2000, otherwise it goes to approver 2. So now let's test the amounts also, and let's test how it behaves. So if I go to sales order and pick one which is still open, let's say this one, it's still open, the amount is 5132. so let me reduce the amount. In the first scenario that we are testing, that if the amount is less than 1000, so we are testing less than 1000, and then who will be the approver ID? That will be me in this case, and what will be the status, which is approved, and we'll talk about it, what that means. So I'll change the amount here, let's say 100, so that changes the total amount to 340 euro in this case, and they'd always take LCY, the amounts. So right now if you see, this order has a salesperson code JR. So if I try to request for approval, it'll give me an error message that there is no setup for this approver, this user and the salesperson purchaser. So I need to make sure that I'm using the right salesperson purchaser. I'll update the lines. Now the amount of this order is 340 euro in this case, the local currency. So if I send it for approval, you will see the status will change to approved automatically without doing anything, as in released. So what actually happened, let's go to navigate and see the approval. Because the amount was less than that, then what I can approve, I can approve till 1000. The approval actually ended here because the amount was within my limit of being approved. Now let's do a one with amount greater than 1000 and less than 2000. In this case, there will be two approvers. One will be me and one will be approver 1. and this entry, because the sender name and approver name is same, will be automatically approved, and the other entry will be open. That means yet to be approved. So let's test this scenario. Going back to same order, and this time I'll reopen it. To make it more than 1000, I'll increase the amount, let's say 1000, and still less, no, it's more than 1000, 3400 euro. So now if I send it, it bypasses my limit, but okay, sorry, but it goes beyond that limit, so I'll have to reduce it. Okay, so now this bypasses my limit, but it is within the limit of approver 1. So now when I request for approval, it'll create two entries. One will be for me, which will be automatically approved, and another one for approver 1, and it says that approval request has been sent and it's pending approval. So let's navigate and see approvals. These two are the new entries with the amount. One got automatically approved, and second one is open to be waiting for approver 1 to approve. So let's go to approver 1 window. This is approver 1, yes, and we'll go to the same page, which is request to approve, and you see that the entry is here waiting for my approval. I can approve, reject, add comments if I want. So let's reject it this time. So when I reject it and I come back, I'll see that the order is now open, and the reason is because that entry was rejected by approver 1. Okay, now let's test the last scenario, which is when the approval amount is greater than 2000, which means there will be 3 entries, one for me, one for approver 1, and one for approver 2. The entries that will get created will be approved, open, and created. And it also works in the same way as we discussed in yesterday video, that open means this is yet to be approved, and once this get approved or approved, then approver 2 entry will become open and approver 2 can approve it. So let's go back and change the amount here to, let's say, 1000. It's 3400 euro now. So let's send an approval request. That's sent. Let's navigate and see the approvals. You'll see these 3 entries are created. One is auto approved by me because that was within my limit, and I was the sender and I was the approver. So in that case, system automatically approves the entry, and then this, it's waiting for approver 1 to approve. So let's go to approver 1 and check for request to approve. Request to approve, and let's assume that this gets approved. Once this gets approved, the other entry will be open. This entry will be approved and this one will be open. So let's reload this and see. These two are approved now and this one is open, and now we are waiting for approver 2 to approve it. So let's go to approver 2 and see request to approve, and now let's approve it from approver 2. Once all the approvals have been done, this entry is now will change back to approved. So the order number was or released. So let's see the sales order 101020 is this. Yep. So if you see, the status is changed to released and the whole approval cycle or approval chain is completed. So a quick recap of it. Approval chain approval limit type will create approval request entries on all user on the approver hierarchy up to including the first approver also, and this will include the approvers which amounts of the document requested is beyond their approval limit. So as we have seen, if we create a order with order amount less than 1000, then I can self approve it and there is no approval process required. If I create it between 1000 and 2000, then it goes to approver 1, and if I create it for more than 2000, then it creates for approver 1 and approver 2. So that was the first option in our workflow setup. The next one is direct approver. So let's see that. So I'll clear these messages and we'll see what happens when we choose the other option. So let's go back to our workflow and update our workflow. So disable it, click on it, choose the option, and this time we are going to use direct approver, approval limit type of direct approver. We'll again test the same 3 scenarios and see how it behaves when we choose the direct approver option. So the approval is activated and we'll see all these. The setup remains same. We'll see all 3 options when order is less than 1000 or between this or this. When we choose direct approver in our workflow setup, in that option only the direct approver will receive the approval request regardless of the amounts or regardless of the limit or order amount that is there on the order. It will always go to the direct approver, and let's see what that means. So the setup remains same. So let me pick a sales order which is there. We have already used this, so let's pick this one this time, and coming down a bit, it's 2998 euro this time. So I'll change that value so that it is less than 1000. Let's do this, and this is just for demo. Don't change unit prices. I'm just doing it to record this video, but don't change it unless you know what you're doing. So now if you see, the total euro is 900. The second thing, that if you remember, we are using salesperson and purchaser, so I need to make sure that I use one which I am set up to. So updated that. Okay, so we are talking about an order which is 900 euro, which is less than my limit of approval, and let's see how this time it behaves. Request approver, send request, and this is changed to released, and let's see what entries were created. Navigate, order, approval. So it was automatically approved for me with the amount which was within my limit. So okay, that's kind of similar behavior what we saw in the last option. So let's change the amount and increase it let's say I change it to 250, it goes to 1300, which means, and let's keep on adding these options. Approver ID is Saurav and status was approved. This time we are talking about amount more than 1000 but less than 2000. Let's request for approver, send approval request. This is again released because, as I said earlier, this just looks for the direct approver who can approve it. Okay, now let's check the third option where we increase this amount to, let's say, oh, it's released, so I'll have to reopen it. More than 2000, and let's request for approval again, and it is again released. So it always look for the direct approver that can approve it. So to actually understand it, what that means, I'll go back and I'll change my approval user setup, or we'll understand it here. When I'm requesting it, it doesn't care about the sales amount approval limit. That we know because it looks for direct approver. It should be going to my direct approver, which is approver 1, irrespective of the amount, but still going to this as in getting auto approved instead of going to approver 1. My expectation was that it will go to approver 1 irrespective of the amount. So let's check it on MSDN if we can. Workflow, let me click on this. We have set that approval type is direct approver, and there is not more details, so let's do a learn more and let's see what that is. Okay, restrict or allow, verify, let me search for it. So I was under assumption, and maybe I'll have to go back and check in Dynamics Nav, but even on this Microsoft page it talks about that in case of direct approver, the approval request entry is only created for the immediate approver regardless of the approval limit, which means that in this scenario, which is kind of similar to ours, when user 1 creates a approval request, in case of direct approver, and this is approver types approver. Okay, so approver type, there is no approval limit type direct approver defined here. Which approves the whole approval. So that means that we should not use approver type approval limit type approval direct approver in case of salesperson purchaser, because I don't see that as an option. It says same behavior as of approver type approver, with the difference that the first approver of the document is identified by the salesperson purchaser code. So okay, but if it is the same behavior, then it also says that direct approver, a request will be sent to user 2 regardless of the amount, because user 2 is the direct approver of user 1. But that actually didn't happen in our case, because we were using the direct approver and our requester was Saurabh and his direct approver was approver 1, but it didn't went to approver 1, it was automatically approved. So maybe I'll have to do more research on this one to figure out how to use this option. So sorry for that, I should have tested that earlier. But coming back to the third option, so let's modify our approver workflow again, and let's try using the third option, which is first qualified approver in approver type salesperson purchaser with limit type first qualified approver. And let's enable this, and let's open our slide and we'll filter it out. We'll test the same scenarios as we did. In first qualified approver, the approval request entry is only created for the first qualified approver. And what I mean by first qualified, that is the user who have the approval limit in terms of amount who can approve it. It will eliminate the middle approvals. So like if I create for less than 1000, in this case I'm pretty sure it will be auto approved. In case of 1000 to 2000, it will only create it for approver 1, and in case of more than 2000, it will only create for approver 2. It will skip the middle approver, which is approver 1, and that's my expectation. So let's test it. Let's go back to our sales orders and pick a new one. Let's say this time this, and we'll again test all three scenarios. I'll change the salesperson code so that it supports my approval user setup. And then coming down here, it's right now 73. Let me change the quantity this time so that it also reduces the amount, and the amount is still more, so let me reduce this also. Okay, so this is less than 1000, and we are testing the first scenario, which is less than the requester limit, and we will request approval, send approval request, and it gets released, which is as we expected. Now we are checking it for 1000 to 2000, and as per my expectation, this should be approved and this one should be open. So let's reopen it, increase the quantity. Okay, so it's now greater than 1000 but less than 2000, and let's request approval, send approval request, and that has been sent. What happens with that is it creates two entries. One is it didn't create two entries, so that's the difference. It skipped me also because I'm not the qualified person who can approve this amount, which is 14,1441 euro. So it didn't create for me and didn't automatically approve it. It only created it for approver 1. So in case of 2000, it should create for approver 2, and approval process remains as it is. So I'm not going into the approval process, and I'll cancel this approval request, and this time I'll increase it to 4, which makes it more than 2000, and I'll also increase it to 2, which makes it approx 3000 euros. Oh, USD this time. Okay, so now let's send the approval request and see what happens. My expectation is only one entry should be created for approver 2. Order, dimension approval, and we'll see that there is only one entry for approver 2, which means that it eliminated any intermediate approval that is required and directly went to the first qualified approver based on the amount. So the only person or only approver that can approve that particular amount, it will directly move to that same specific approver. Now let's test the last scenario which we have in our workflows, and before doing that I'll cancel the approval. Okay, and let's change our workflow setup again. Workflow again, selected, disable it, change the first response and change the first option to the last one, which is a specific approver. Now in a specific approver, you will be prompted to choose that specific user ID to whom you want to send it. It doesn't respect the approval user setup because it will go directly to that particular user. It doesn't checks for hierarchy, limit or anything. It will ask for that specific user that you want to approve from, let's say admin, a new user out of our approval chain, and click OK, enable, and then let's go to sales orders. And let's pick one which is open, and this time it doesn't care, it do care about the sender who is sending it, because that's how it is being set up. And like right now the amount is 28827, which based on our setup seems like that it should go to approver 1, and approver 2 is unlimited sales approver. But if I send a request for approval, in this case the request is sent, but this time it is sent to the user called admin. It directly created for user admin. It didn't worried about what is the approver hierarchy, and these are old ones if you're seeing those. So maybe I'll have to pick another one so that it makes it a little bit clear. So let's choose a other order which is not yet been gone to approval. Let's quickly check it. Okay, empty, requesting for approval. It does respect the salesperson purchaser because that's the type. So you'll have to make sure that your salesperson is set correctly, because we are using the type salesperson purchaser. Okay, and then request, oh, there is no amount, so I'll have to key in the unit price. Let's say this much, 40k. Requesting for approval, send approval request. Request has been sent. Navigate and approvals. So if you see, it automatically approved one for me, and that's just the normal de facto entry which is created and approved. But then it created one for admin, which is open for admin to approve, which is my specific approver. So let's do a quick recap before we end this. When you choose type salesperson and purchaser, the salesperson on the document is checked against the approval user setup. That's the first thing that we learned today. Then if you choose type approver chain, in this case the approval request entries will be created for all users which fill in that approver hierarchy till the amount of the document is not yet met. If you choose the direct approver, which we were not able to test correctly, but as per the documentation from Microsoft, the direct approver that is defined against the person who is sending the request will always get the request to approve, irrespective of amounts. Then the next one we saw is the first qualified approver. Here the approval request entry is only created for the first qualified approver, which means the person who can approve that amount. It will eliminate all other approval requests which are the middle approval that are in your hierarchy, and will directly go based on the amount. And then the last that we saw is a specific approver. In this case you need to choose a user ID or approver user ID that you want to send request, and it doesn't check for the hierarchy or the limit, it directly goes to that specific user. So I hope you find this video useful. In the next video we'll quickly go through the third option in approver type. Please do share your views, questions and suggestions as comment to this video. Please do share this video and subscribe to this channel. Have a great day and see you next time.